I've developed a top secret scoring system that's going to predict exactly which players' cards are going up during the NBA playoffs, and I'm sharing it with you today. Let's data dive. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Market Movers video. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot, and I am pumped because I have developed a proprietary scoring system that is sure to make you and me and all of our friends and relatives happy and rich. Yes, I have compiled all the different factors into one place that can lead to a player's card prices going up during the playoffs, and I've weighted them and I've scored all these players, and I'm going to share it today with you completely for free. Now, obviously, I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek. Those of you who know me know I do like to go through this exercise. I love to look at the data. I love to speculate and, try to guess what's going to happen here. But I don't have a crystal ball. I do know different factors that contribute to players' cards, though, going up during the playoffs. So I've really done that. I've put that into a scoring system, and I'm excited to share that with you, walk through it, get your feedback, and then, a couple months from now, see exactly where I was right and where I was wrong, or where the scoring system was right and wrong. But before we do that, I'm really excited because I'm going to reveal. This is the great reveal. I went through and I did a contest with Jeff 6 months ago, right at the start of the NBA season. I pulled him into this studio and I said, it's time for a challenge, Jeff. It's time for me to show you how much smarter I am than you when it comes to basketball cards. We each got a $3,000 imaginary budget, and we put cards into our collection in Market Movers. So we each got a collection, and we had to buy, I believe, 10 different players, and we could buy multiple copies of different cards. But basically, we needed to stick to the $3,000 budget, and we bought those cards with the last comp value right to start the season, and we snapped a chalk line and said, the day the playoffs are starting, we will go in and we will look and see who won this challenge. So here's the results. I had to take a screenshot because the playoffs started last week. So I took a screenshot, and then we'll go in and look at a little more detail in the collection. But Jeff, just not great overall. Sorry, Jeff. You were down $338 on your $3,000 investment. So final value, $2,650 that he bought 13 different cards. So he finished in the red. Honestly, during the regular season for the NBA, that's kind of to be expected. There's the big run-up before the season a lot of times, and hype and speculation, and even over the summer and whatever. And now, during the playoffs, that's when you see the biggest price spikes on specific players who have success. Well, let's see how I did. Probably didn't do too great either, huh? Oh, wait, $410 profit. Not too bad. Not too bad. I finished in the green. So $748 better than Jeff, to be exact, on the 12 cards that I purchased. So let's jump over to collection, and let's actually look at the cards that we purchased and kind of what was going on there. Now, I will say, Jeff, or just a few days later, we've seen some continued, market swings. Jeff would actually be down $422 now, just a few days into the playoffs, and I would be barely in the green, or in the black, as we usually say, at $28.40. So if I go back to collection, I want to look at who did the best for me and the worst, and we'll look at Jeff's as well, just briefly. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was the one that I said I was the highest on. That card I bought for $601 to start the season, and it's up $398 as of today, but it's actually come down. This card was, averaging over the last month more like $1,300. It topped out at almost $1,500, and then it's had two sales at $979 and $999. There's only 684 of these PSA 10 silvers from the 2018, products, so not a super common card for a PSA 10. Kind of confusing. We're going to talk about Shay quite a bit more in a few minutes, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised to see this card trending downward going to the playoffs in light of the fact that he's the MVP favorite still, in light of the fact that the Thunder are the favorites, or one of the favorites to win the NBA championship. But that card definitely paid off for me. De'Aaron Fox, I said before the season, I specifically said, I think De'Aaron Fox might get traded to the San Antonio Spurs, and if that happens, I believe his card prices will go up. Well, that's exactly what happened. He got traded to the Spurs. There were rumors that, he might wind up out of the Kings. They got it. They made a move, the Spurs did, to bring him in and get him paired up with Wemby. Obviously not the season they were hoping for with injuries and other things, but they're building for the future, and I think the Spurs have a lot of potential. Jalen Green, he's up $24, so that was a 14% profit, and then Jason Tatum up $18, mostly flat. Kobe White was actually up for a while. you can see. But then, the Bulls got bounced from the playoffs last week. So, yeah, this card was up at $65 on this particular copy, now down to $36 again. So when it comes to speculation, I always say this was a specific challenge that we had to put rules around. I suppose I could have made it like, oh, we can sell these cards at any point during the season when we see profit in them, but that wasn't the parameters of the contest. So Kobe White was actually a decent one. Dante DiVincenzo did not have the season I was hoping for. And then Wemby was the big surprise for me. I thought it would be a good buy no matter what. I thought there'd be more hype. His cards had come down so much. Unfortunate with the thrombosis, and I really just hope to see him come back more than anything. And then this is the one I caught the most flack for. So I'm going to look at the last 365. I snagged this Joel Embiid PSA 10 silver, of which there are only 89, at a low point. So I bought this card at like $793, and I thought, man, I'm getting a really good value on it. It was this sale that I was basing the comp off of. And people are like, oh, you can't do that. That was just a bogus low sale. And I thought, surely this will get back up to like 1,000 and Embiid will have a solid season. He'll be in the MVP conversation. And I was pretty confident. Well, not so much. That card tanked, absolutely tanked down with a sale in December of $338. And then most recently, $555. Say what you want about Embiid, $338 for a PSA 10, pop 89 of his rookie card. That's just crazy, especially when you see the prices for some of these other players and what they're going for. We're going to look at those in a minute, but that was my portfolio. Let's look at Jeff's real quick and switch gears. So Cade was the big payoff for Jeff. He bought two different cards with 3 copies. He's like, I'm going Cade. I think Cade was like his number 1 most confident pick. He was right. He was right about Cade. He was wrong about everything else in his portfolio, but he was right about Cade, and it helped keep him afloat. Brunson was basically flat. LaMelo Ball, that card actually was down, if I remember. Let me look at like last 60 days. I guess it's kind of at a low point right now. LaMelo, LaMelo's solid, but I just said, look, the Hornets aren't going to be in the mix. They're not going to be in the playoffs. He thought they had a lot of potential this year, that Vegas was warm on them. No, not so much. Maxey, it was just a dumpster fire this year with the Sixers. So that didn't go great. Ja did not, pay off. He bought 2 different Ja cards, and then he bought 2 copies of this Wemby Optic Holo, which I thought at the time might be his differentiator. I thought that might actually win the contest for him once he did that. But overall, this was a really fun challenge. And if you want to do something like this with your friends, you could do this. You could sign up for Market Movers, use all the data, add the cards to different categories in your collection, and set a contest and just have fun with it. This was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that Jeff and I got the opportunity to do this. All right, so let's switch gears here to the scoring system. Of course, all this data throughout this whole process is going to be brought to you by Market Movers. If you want to use Market Movers, you can download it completely for free from the App Store and use sales history, use our stats totally free. And then if you actually want to sign up and start tracking your collection and doing other things, you can go to marketmoversapp.com and use promo code DIVE. That'll get you 20% off, but not before you get a 2-week free trial. So check it out. Let's get into this scoring system. I've made videos in the past talking about the different factors that go into driving a player's value up overall. But when it comes to playoff time, there's one thing more than anything else that is going to give a player the most odds to go up in value, and that's just their probability to win the championship. So what I did here was I stacked these categories: probability to win the title, star factor of the player, just how popular are they is very important, breakout potential, kind of the yin to the yang. So you got a superstar, or you've got a player that's flying under the radar that has the opportunity to get into the limelight. Those 2 things very important. Big game potential, just what's the odds they can drop 40, 50, 60 points in a given game or have a gaudy stat line in some heroic performance. And then storyline potential overall is think about it, just what would the headlines be around this? Are people going to get emotionally invested? Is LeBron going to win another championship late in his career, or Steph going to find a way to do it? All these different types of things, these young thunder. Storyline is kind of a factor. And then finally, just overall role and usage. I threw 5 points of weighting. So I said 50 points of weighting on their probability to win the championship. You could even argue that it's a lot more. I didn't want it to be too much, but honestly, the deeper you get into the playoffs, the more chance that a given player has the probability to go up. The one offsetting factor to that is if you have a big series in the big first round and you convince people you're a contender, while you go into the second round, you might see your prices go up. Last year, Anthony Edwards did that after the second round when his cards just went completely crazy. because suddenly people were thinking, man, is he really the guy? Is he going to lead the Wolves to the NBA championship? Obviously, that didn't happen. It was the Mavs instead that made it. But this is the scoring system. So I weighted all of it. And then I took the top 3 players, or 3 players of note, let's say, from every team, and I scored each of them. Like how highly do I rate them on a scale from 1 to 10 on each of these categories? So probability to win the title is going to be the same for each of the 3 players on a given team. So the Thunder, it's a 10. Right now, Vegas says it's basically the Thunder and the Celtics, and then the Cavs to potentially win the NBA championship. So they're a 10 out of 10. Shay, star factor, 10. Breakout potential, 5. Big game potential, 10. He can have monster stat lines. Storyline potential, I said, is a 9. I think just getting the Thunder to the finals would be a very big deal, especially if they win it. They, by the way, had like the biggest plus-minus points per game of any team ever in history, higher than the Bulls, higher than the Warriors. Biggest margin of victory per game for the Thunder this year. So they're very talented, and we saw that in Game 1 in the blowout against Memphis. And then finally, his role in usage is obviously a 10. So I don't want to take the time and bore all of you and go through all of this like super in detail. But what I did was, I'll just kind of scroll through this. I looked at Vegas odds to win the championship, and I used that to determine probability to win the title. Star factor is obviously subjective, but somebody like Luka and LeBron and Shay, they're all going to be 10s. Jokic is a 10. And so I went through this. We're going to link this sheet down below in the show notes. So you want to look at this all in detail. If you want to make a copy of this file, to have your own copy, to modify the scoring system, to change the weighting, to do any of this, if you like to geek out like that, you can absolutely do that. And by the way, when you click on the link, all you'll have to do is click on File and then make a copy to start making your own edits if you have a Google Drive account and you want to do that. But I'm going to keep scrolling through this, and you'll kind of see, we're just going to go over and actually look at the results. So I'm scrolling through this list. The Cavs are obviously, a solid team. Celtics are still the favorites in the East in spite of not being the 1 seed. And so we'll keep going all the way over just briefly to kind of show you what this looks like. I did throw Jalen Suggs on here because I'm like looking at the Magic going, I don't really think there's a third person who can have any potential outside of Paolo and Franz. But, he's obviously injured and not playing right now. And then we'll go over to the Heat. So let's actually get to the results. And I'm going to show you this. The way the system came out, Shay was number 1. He came out with a 9.3 probability to go up during the playoffs. And again, that has to do with his superstar potential, big game potential, and most importantly, the odds of the Thunder to win the championship. Jason Tatum was number 2. Now, what was interesting is last year, Tatum's cards actually went down during the playoffs. The Celtics won the championship, and Tatum's cards went down, and then they went down even more after they won the championship. Tatum didn't show up and win the title for the Celtics last year. Jaylen Brown was the one who won Finals MVP. They've got a great team, system going. Tatum wasn't bad, but he wasn't the guy that showed up as like this superstar in the playoffs. So it's interesting to look at him and say, will it be different this year? If the Celtics make another deep run, will it be Tatum who carries them, or will it be more of the team situation? Again, we'll see. Chet Holmgren, 8.31. Donovan Mitchell he's no stranger to big game playoffs, big playoff games, big game heroics, all those kinds of things. So if the Cavs do make a deep push, you got to think Donovan Mitchell's going to be a part of that. Jaylen Brown up in the list. And so we'll keep scrolling down. Jalen Williams, Kristaps Porzingis. It might seem funny when you see this scoring system to go like, wait, Darius Garland and Porzingis have a higher score than Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Anthony Edwards. Like, that doesn't seem to make any sense, but you got to go back to the weighting. So I took this list, and what I did was I put these into 4 different charts that we're going to walk through. And I'll just talk through the different scenarios that I think could lead to each player going up or down or not. And again, ultimately, there's like a subjectivity to this. There's some intuition. There's some gut. You just go, I don't care. I don't care about this score for Evan Mobley. I just don't see a situation where his cards go up. So I'm going to go through this right now. And then if you want to hear more discussion about this, Jeff and I are actually going to be talking about this on the public live stream for the Market Movers channel next Tuesday. So not tomorrow, but the following 2 Tuesdays from now, we're going to have our public monthly members live stream. It's open to everybody to watch. We're going to discuss this and a lot of other things with cards. We rip a lot of packs. And anybody who's a Market Movers member is eligible to win prizes, ask questions, be in the giveaways, play trivia. It's a lot of fun, so you're definitely going to want to add that to your calendar. But let's talk about this. Shay, I'm hesitant to say something, without all the disclaimers. Like, you do whatever you want. You do your own research. But I really do believe that if there's one player who's a buy right now in the playoffs, it's Shay, especially because his cards have been coming down over the last month. This price just doesn't make sense to me. And it's not just his PSA 10. Like his PSA 9, you can see has dipped down. That card was up at $298 high sale and less than a month ago, and is all the way down to $238 now. That's a big dip. Like, it's got me wanting to go buy some Shay cards right now. I would not have thought that once the playoffs had started, this would be a time to buy somebody like Shay. But it's really interesting. Now, go back to what I said at the beginning. Keep in mind, taxes, fees, shipping, delays, all the things, there's risk. There's risk, no doubt about it. But we did see that this would have paid off in a big time way last year for somebody like Anthony Edwards. To me, Shay's the guy that has the potential to make a deep run. All right, let's talk about Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards, good game one. The Wolves won that game. Would I buy him right now? No, not particularly. I don't really see the Wolves making a deep playoff run this year. I just don't see it happening. So because of that, I would be really nervous that these cards are going to dip back down. If I go back to the last 365 days, this is what I'm talking about when this Ant-Man card spiked up over $1,800 and now is down to under $800. So just the opposite. Like, is there opportunity or is there risk? I see the trajectory on Ant-Man's cards going up slightly over the last month. I don't see a big, deep playoff run coming, so right now I'd be personally a sell on Anthony Edwards. Tatum? Yeah, Tatum just fails to capture the heart and interest of non-Celtics fans. I don't know a lot of people who aren't Celtics fans who have any excitement or enthusiasm for Jason Tatum. I don't know what it is. He's fantastic. He's incredibly talented. But non-Celtics fans just are like, nah, I don't care. And maybe are even like anti-Celtics. They're just like, I'm tired of seeing that team always in the mix and winning every few years and coming into the contest. So I don't know what to think of Tatum. I do think the Celtics have a very, very balanced team. I think they are the legit contender in the Eastern Conference. This card was up at $825. Recently down, somebody scooped one at $690. If you can get that card for under $700 right now, sure, I think there's a lot of potential there, over time. Last year, here's what we saw. This is what I was talking about during the playoffs. I guess there was a little run up with Tatum, and then he just started to come down. And so maybe if you really believe the Celtics are going to go deep, and a lot of people do, instead of placing your bet in Vegas for them just to win the championship, some people would want to do that on Tatum and maybe even his teammate Jaylen Brown's cards, who we can look at. Let's skip down to the bottom. And Brown, again, he went up last year. Over the last 30 days, he's down. This one sold for $231, now down to $150. That's a very good price on the Jaylen Brown. That's a very good price on Jaylen Brown for $150 for his Prism Silver PSA 10. So Brown, to me, like of those two guys, just because of how low he is, looks like the better buy. At the same time, it's typically the superstars that see the biggest price appreciation. So could go either way in that. Cade, I did my little rant on the Top 5 Tuesday a couple weeks ago. You all heard that about, my opinion about the Pistons right now and my lack of enthusiasm until I see them as legit contenders in the East. I can't let my guard down. I just can't do it as a jaded, hurt Detroit sports fan. But I do like Cade. I do want to keep rooting for him. But this card's rising. I think now is absolutely the time to get out on Cade Cunningham. I just don't see that upset happening, especially not after choking away game one. So let me know if you disagree with me on that. And then Donovan Mitchell, he might be my number 2 pick. I don't know. We're going to keep going through this, but look how cheap his card is for the best player on the team with the best record in the East. The problem is I sort of see the Cavs this year as what the Thunder were last year. A very good team with the best record in their conference, with really good defense, but not quite ready, in my opinion, to take that step to the NBA championship. I don't see them as quite ready. I think they'll continue to get better. They've got a young core. Maybe next year they'll take that step forward. But Mitchell, looking at this card, 180 days, it's down. This card sold for $300 at the beginning of March, and now it's down to $200. It was much cheaper than that this time last year when the Cavs weren't the force that they are now. I guess that was 6 months ago. Spider seems like he could be a buy too. It just depends. Do you believe in the Cavs or the Celtics? If they're about to collide, though, in the East, in the Eastern Conference Finals, I could definitely see a scenario where Mitchell, Brown, and Tatum's cards are all up in price. So these are sort of the favorites. Collectively, I see all of them having potential outside of Anthony Edwards and Cade Cunningham. All right, this is sort of the pre-existing GOATs. People have already done it, already won championships, done big things, or had other heroics. I know it's funny. I threw Jimmy Butler in here because he's a veteran. You see the price difference on this is his regular Prism PSA 10 because the silvers were so rare from back in 2012. Jimmy Buckets, though, he's played well, and the Warriors, more importantly, have been very good, very, very good since Jimmy Butler got to that team. And they won game 1. They're a 7 seed, but they won game 1. I'd watch out. I'd watch out for the Warriors. I'm going to be honest. I pushed them all the way through to the Western Conference Finals in my playoff bracket that we filled out for our Market Movers Challenge, Market Movers Member Challenge. Got to take a risk, and I think they could do it. As a 7 seed, I think they could do it. They're sneaky. So we look at somebody like Jimmy Butler. If they do that, I mean, $93 on this card, you got to think that's going to have some room to go up, although it has been going up. So Jimmy Butler is a player who's seen a lot of yo-yos in his card prices over the last 5 years because of what he's done in the playoffs historically, and then they come back down to earth. We got Steph. This is his PSA 9 tops. If you look at it, okay, it is up over the last year. We saw like a $1,300 average, it's up around $1,500 now. The Warriors do have some buzz behind them. If you could have gotten this card here on April 10th, for $1,140, I mean, no matter what, that's like a steal, in my opinion. Long term, this card has a lot of staying power. So even if you want to take the risk right now, say, you know what, if the Warriors go on some magical run with that storyline factor, this card could really see some big price appreciation. But if not, well, I don't know. I got a really good card for a long-term investment. So that's kind of the case, obviously, with both Steph as well as I would say with LeBron. This is his PSA 10 tops. And this card is, over the last 30 days, $1,600, close to that on the last sale. We've seen some price spikes. But the Lakers have some buzz. Obviously, it's Luka and LeBron. I don't see it. I don't see it happening unless the league wants it to happen. There's your tinfoil moment. But I think the Warriors have a better chance. I think they have a better overall team. But, depending on what you see happening in the West, which is still pretty loaded in terms of potential with the Nuggets thrown into the mix. The most confusing thing in the world was the Nuggets firing Mike Malone. We saw the Grizzlies fire their coach, and then we see the Nuggets fire Malone going into the playoffs. Just really, really strange. But here's Jokic. Do you think the Nuggets can win the first round? Depends. He's the best player in the NBA. I mean, I think Shay should win the MVP this year, but Jokic is the best player in the NBA. And anytime you have him going out on the court, plus a guy that's no stranger to big game playoff moments in Jamal Murray, it's not a team that I'd want to be playing at any point. And finally, the Bucks. You got Giannis. They just got embarrassed in Game 1 versus the Pacers. That game was ugly. The Pacers kept the pace, no pun intended. They dictated kind of how that game went. Giannis gave it his best effort, and literally nobody else really showed up. So I don't have a lot of optimism. I think on my scoring system, I had the Bucks as a 2 out of 10, title probability. It might even be a 1. They've got Lillard coming back, either Game 2 or 3. We'll see. But I don't see a lot of opportunity for Giannis in the playoffs, and because of that, I wouldn't necessarily be buying Giannis cards right now. All right, let's shift over. These are other players with some name, behind them, some superstar identity or just, big roles on their teams, but not necessarily the top tier talent. So we got Ja Morant, and at this point, it's got to catch up at some point with Ja. Like, he's flashy. He's fantastic. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is the best player on that team at this point. The most complete player, the most, obviously Defensive Player of the Year, award winner, just a very, very good player. Ja is an offensive threat, but he doesn't look like the same player that he used to be. He didn't put up huge numbers this year, and I don't think his price is warranted. $287 for a PSA 10 Ja Morant. That's pop $1,757. And I'm going to remind you that we've got Donovan Mitchell at $213 and Jaylen Brown at $150. Pop $305. Jaylen Brown won Finals MVP, has a championship, and Ja Morant hasn't done anything close to that. And the Grizzlies are absolutely not going to get past the Thunder. So I'd be selling Ja personally. Jalen Brunson, I was very excited about the whole like Villanova reunited thing. It was sad to see Dante DiVincenzo go. And then it just muddled things up in New York in terms of like who the guy is now. They've got Towns, they've got Brunson, they've got Bridges, they've got OG, they've got they've got Josh Hart. They've got a good balanced team, but somehow they don't seem to have the same potential this year that they did last year. Lacking a little bit more of that defensive tenacity and hustle and grit. I don't see much from Brunson. I don't see the Knicks as legit contenders in the East. And Brunson, to me, also just hasn't had the same, like, je ne sais quoi factor this year that he did last year. Chet Holmgren, Chet can have big games. I think he's still got a lot of development to do to really solidify himself as somebody who's worth the price premium that he has, but I understand, like, he's obviously a former very high draft pick. He's got a lot of upside. Defensively, he's good, shot blocker. So his prices are down, though. Just like Shay, he was at $265, now down to $220. Between he and Jalen Williams, it's just kind of going to be interesting. Do either of these other guys have some potential or room to go up if the Thunder make a deep run, or is it just going to be Shay? Personally, if I were spending the money, I would just put it into Shay. Even if it means you have to go into lower grades, PSA 9 or other cards, I'd be focusing on Shay in this case. Jalen Williams is a heck of a shooter, heck of an offensive talent, very good player. But again, when I look at this in a PSA 10, $191, if I'm going to pick between Donovan Mitchell or Jalen Williams, I'm going Donovan Mitchell. If I'm going to pick between Jaylen Brown and Jalen Williams, I'm picking Jaylen Brown because of the upside and just their overall role on their respective teams. And then Evan Mobley, very good player. I don't think Evan Mobley has staying power with his card prices long term. There's still a lot of hype around him. People recognize he's very good, but his stats don't really line up with like his price premium. He's a player that I unfortunately see is potentially going down quite a bit over time. And then this is like honestly pretty confusing to me. Darius Garland's a very good player. Again, he's not, I wouldn't say he should be like $300, $400. He's not, necessarily Jalen Brunson, but at $79, compare him to Evan Mobley at $211. Between those two players, again, look at the upside. I'd be thinking, Darius Garland he does have big game potential. He could go out and put up, 35 and 14 assists or something like that in a really meaningful Game 7. Garland's a guy at that price point that I think, you could rationalize. Even if we look at the last 365 days, $65 average over that time frame, you're up $15. You don't have a lot to lose in terms of actual like dollars. So Darius Garland's an interesting one. And then let's look at some like sleepers, some outside candidates or other players here. This is the last of the group that I thought was on the high end of that scoring system. Towns. I've sort of given up on speculating on Karl Anthony Towns. Early in his career, I was as high on him as all of the GMs in the NBA were. At one point, all the NBA GMs voted Karl Anthony Towns in an anonymous poll as the number one player they would want to build their franchise around for the coming 10 years. He's very good. He's an incredible three-point shooter. He can get his zone. He can drive to the bucket. Defensively, we see a little bit of mix from time to time. He has had some big blocks and other things. Cat's a really good player. His cards are up. I don't understand why, somebody like Towns or Anthony Edwards, his former teammate, are like rising while the Thunder cards are going down and other players are going down who have better championship odds. That's very confusing to me. But there's an opportunity there. So I wouldn't necessarily be buying Towns right now, even though maybe the scoring system says there's some opportunity. Clippers, Harden, Clippers, whatever, there's just like that Embiid factor. There's that thing where just a good portion of the hobby just doesn't like Harden. They don't have any interest in his cards. They don't want to collect him. And then he has his fair share of like champions and people who are like, he's a much better player than people give him credit for. Very split camp on James Harden. I don't think the Clippers have deep playoff potential or aspirations, so I'd be a sell on James Harden. Maybe if you want to get a PSA 10 and hold that long term because you just think he's going to go down as a top guard all time. Sure, okay. Austin Reeves, this is his orange ice, and the only reason I did this is because it actually has a higher pop count than his Prism Silver. Austin Reeves has been going up. PSA 10 pop 105 over the last 30 days, actually down a little bit. Reeves could get the spotlight on him. When they didn't have Luka, I would have been more inclined to think, he has some of that playoff potential. Now I don't really see it. I mean, it would take like one of those games where Luka goes 6 for 19, maybe LeBron's kind of quiet or gets in foul trouble or something, and Reeves just goes off for, 30 plus to see a bump. But again, then you're trying to fight with everybody else planning to liquidate their cards at a price spike. It's tough. I probably wouldn't mess with Austin Reeves right now. Porzingis is a guy who can who can have some big games. Like, fill the stat sheet up. 13 rebounds, 6 blocks, 28 points, high shooting percentage. He's good. $68. Not a lot of risk in that for his PSA 10 Prism Silver. Again, I look at the last year. This card actually did spike up last year to $200. History says there's some potential there, especially if they're going to make a deep run. Maybe Porzingis is a buy there. And then finally, we'll look at OG and Mikal Bridges. This is crazy. $15 for a PSA 10 Prism Silver of OG Anunoby is crazy. Like, that's a crazy buy, especially when you look at that card having hovered around $58. I'm not really sure what happened there, but somebody got a deal. I did look at it. It looks to be a real sale. And then this Mikal Bridges, he's been coming down to really solid overall players, but role players on that Knicks team. Not a lot of investability. Very cheap, so low floor in terms of, or high floor, I would say, in terms of like risk. But, unless OG does what he did a couple of years ago and hits like a big buzzer beater at the end of the game or something, I don't see a ton of potential in their card prices. So overall, if I were looking at this, I'm going to go back to my scoring system. Shay, he's my top buy. I think Donovan Mitchell, Jaylen Brown, because of how low they are, also have a lot of potential. I think Steph is a good, safe bet right now with some upside into the playoffs. Jokic as well, I would throw into that category. And then Tatum and Chet Holmgren maybe have some opportunity there too. Look at Porzingis and Darius Garland as like your very cheap, affordable buys with some potential to go up. But I want to know what you think, and what do you think of the scoring system in general? What do you think of those categories, the weighting, everything else? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to make a copy, click that link, make a copy. Let me know who you think has the highest potential going into the playoffs here. And download Market Movers. Try it out for free. And if you want to use that code, you can always do that to get 2 weeks free and 20% off for life. Appreciate you watching. Thanks so much. Happy investing. Keep on collecting and make sure to have fun.